Ayesha had always believed that silence had a voice. Not the kind you hear with your ears, but the kind you feel somewhere deep inside where thoughts echo louder than words. That belief was what brought her to the desert. Endless golden dunes stretched before her like a sleeping ocean frozen in time. The air shimmered with heat and the horizon blurred into something unreal, something almost dreamlike. It was beautiful in a way that felt dangerous, like something that could swallow you whole if you stayed too long. But Ayesha didn't mind danger. She stepped forward, leaving behind footprints that the wind quickly erased, as if the desert refused to remember anyone who walked across it. At first it felt freeing. No noise, no people, no expectations. Just her and something infinite. She walked for hours, letting the silence wrap around her like a second skin. She laughed once softly at how small she felt in a place so vast. It was the kind of small that didn't scare her, it humbled her. But the desert changes slowly, and then all at once. At some point, without realizing, when the dunes around her stopped looking familiar, the direction she thought she had come from disappeared into identical waves of sand. The sun-moved shadows shifted, and the world rearranged itself in a way that made her chest tighten. She turned back, or at least she thought she did. Minutes passed, then more. Her steps became faster, less certain. The calmness she had carried with her began to crack, replaced by something colder. Fear, the kind that creeps in quietly and then refuses to leave. Her throat felt dry. Her water bottle was lighter than she remembered. She climbed a dune hoping to see something, anything, but the view only confirmed what she already feared. There was nothing. No road, no sign of life, no direction, just endless sand. And then, a figure, far away, still watching. Her breath caught. For a moment she thought it was a trick of the heat, a mirage, something her mind created to fight the loneliness. But the figure moved, slowly, deliberately, towards her. Ayesha didn't run. She couldn't turn. Her body felt frozen between fear and hope, caught in the uncertainty of whether this stranger meant safety or something worse. As he came closer, she saw him clearly, a young man. His clothes were worn, marked by dust and time. His face carried the weight of the sun, but his eyes were calm in a way that didn't belong to someone lost. "Are you lost?" he asked. His voice was steady, grounded. "Real?" Ayesha swallowed, her voice barely holding together. "Yes." He nodded like it was something obvious, something he had already known. "You shouldn't be here alone." There was no judgment in his tone, just truth. "Who are you?" she asked, still unsure whether to trust him. He glanced at the horizon before answering. "Someone who knows this place." And for reasons she couldn't explain, that was enough. He turned and began walking, not even checking if she would follow. For a second she hesitated, then she did. Because staying alone felt far more dangerous than trusting a stranger who seemed to belong to the desert itself. They walked in silence, the kind of silence that didn't feel empty, but full of unspoken questions. After what felt like hours, they reached a small shelter hidden between dunes, a worn tent barely visible unless you knew where to look. It felt like a secret the desert had chosen to keep. "You'll stay here tonight," he said. "Tonight," she repeated. He looked at her, a faint hint of amusement in his eyes. "You're not leaving the desert in the dark." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold-orange and finally deep blue. One by one, stars appeared brighter than anything she had ever seen in the city. Ayesha sat quietly, her thoughts still catching up to everything that had happened. He sat across from her. No questions, no unnecessary words, just presence. "Why are you here?" she finally asked. He took a moment before answering, as if the question required more honesty than he was used to giving. "Because the desert doesn't lie." "And people do?" she asked softly. He looked at her, then really looked at her. "Yes." That was the moment something shifted. Not love, not even trust, but something close to curiosity, and something deeper, something quieter beginning to take root. The next day he didn't rush to leave. Instead, he showed her how to walk on the sand without exhausting herself, how to read the wind, how to understand direction, without relying on anything but instinct. Days passed. She stopped counting them, because somehow, without deciding to, she stayed. And he didn't ask her to leave. Their conversations were slow, careful, like two people standing on opposite sides of something fragile. He never spoke about his past, and she didn't push him to. There was a distance between them, unspoken, but always there. Yet in that distance something began to grow. It wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious, it was quiet. The way he noticed when she was tired before she said anything, the way she waited for him before eating even when she was hungry, the way silence between them stopped feeling awkward and started feeling like home. One night the desert turned violent. The wind rose suddenly, carrying sand like a storm of needles. The tent shook, the air filled with noise, and chaos and fear returned stronger than before. Ayesha's breath trembled. "I don't want to die here." Her voice broke. For the first time he reached for her. His hand closed around hers, firm, steady, unshaken by the storm. "You want to," he said. And somehow she believed him. She didn't pull her hand away, and he didn't let go. Something changed in that moment. Something neither of them named. The storm passed, but what it left behind stayed. Days turned into something softer, closer. The distance between them didn't disappear, but it began to fade. Until one evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, she asked the question that had been waiting quietly inside her. "Why don't you go back?" He didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the endless dunes, as if the answer was buried somewhere within them. "Because there's nothing waiting for me there," he said finally. And here she asked. This time his voice was quieter. "Peace." Ayesha looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time she understood. But understanding something and accepting it are not the same, because somewhere deep inside her another truth had begun to form. She didn't just feel peace here anymore, she felt him. And that was far more dangerous, because peace doesn't break your heart, but love does, and she was slowly, quietly falling into it. Ayesha didn't realize when peace stopped being enough. It happened quietly, like everything else in the desert. Days blended into each other, marked only by the movement of the sun and the slow shifting of shadows across the dunes. The outside world began to feel distant, unreal, like something she had imagined once but no longer belonged to. And him? He became familiar. Too familiar? "Stay," he said one evening, almost absent-mindedly, as if the word had slipped out before he could stop it. She looked at him. "Stay how long?" He didn't answer immediately. Long enough to forget the way back. There was something in his voice, something fragile, something dangerous. Ayesha felt it, and for a moment she wanted that. But wanting something doesn't make it right. "You're asking me to disappear?" she said softly. He shook his head. "No, I am asking you to choose. The truth between them." That night she couldn't sleep. The stars above felt too close, like they were watching her think. She realized something she had been avoiding. She didn't just feel safe with him anymore. She felt attached, and attachment always comes with a cost. The next morning she found him standing alone on a high dune, looking out into nothing. "You never told me your name," she said. He smiled faintly. "Names don't matter here. They matter to me." A pause. Then, Zayan. The name settled between them like something that made everything more real. "Why are you really here?" she asked again. Not the desert answer, the real one. This time he didn't avoid it. "I left," he said. "Everything people life, because I got tired of losing things I couldn't control." Ayesha felt her chest tighten. "And you think staying here means you want to lose anything?" He looked at her then, and for the first time, there was fear in his eyes. "I want to lose the desert." She swallowed. "But you could lose me." Silence. Heavy. Real. "That's exactly why I don't want you to leave," he said quietly. The choice. Days passed, but something had changed. The silence between them wasn't as easy anymore, because now it carried something unsaid. A decision? Ayesha began to notice things she had ignored before. The harshness of the sun, the endless repetition of the dunes, the way time didn't move here, it just stretched. And she realized something important. Peace without growth becomes a cage. One evening she stood at the edge of a dune, looking toward where the world should be. "I am leaving," she said. The words felt heavier than she expected. Zayan didn't react immediately. He just stood there, still, like the desert itself. "I knew you would," he said finally. That hurt more than if he had tried to stop her. "You're not even going to ask me to stay." He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "If I ask, you might stay for me, and that would be wrong." The storm within. The next morning he prepared to guide her out. They walked again, but this time the silence felt different. Not full, not peaceful, but breaking. Halfway through the journey the wind began to rise. Another storm, stronger than before. The sky dark and sand lifting violently into the air. Ayesha struggled to see, to breathe. "Stay close," Zayan shouted. But the storm didn't care. It swallowed distance, sound, direction. For a moment, she lost him. Panic surged through her. Zayan. No answer. Just the roar of the desert. Fear hit her harder than before, not fear of dying, but fear of losing him, and in that moment, she understood the truth she had been avoiding. She loved him. Not the desert, not the silence. Him, Zayan. A hand grabbed hers, strong, certain. He pulled her close, shielding her from the storm. "Ivy got you," he said. And just like before, she believed him. The ending that wasn't easy. When the storm passed, the world returned slowly. And there, in the distance, something new. A road, a real one. Ayesha's breath caught. "This is it," Zayan said. She looked at him. "This is where you stop." He nodded. "I don't belong beyond this." Her chest tightened. "You could..." He shook his head. "No, I'd just be lost again in a different way." Tears filled her eyes. "This isn't fair. Nothing real ever is. Goodbye or something like it." They stood there between two worlds. One that never changes, and one that never stays the same. "I don't want to forget you," she whispered. "You want to," he said. "How do you know?" He stepped closer. "Because the desert doesn't let you forget what it gives you." A small sad smile. "And neither do I." She laughed softly through tears. And then she hugged him, tight, like she was trying to memorize the feeling. For a moment he held her back. Not like someone who wanted to keep her, but like someone who knew he had to let go. When she pulled away, he didn't stop her, and she didn't ask him to. After, Ayesha walked toward the road, step by step, each one heavier than the last. But she didn't turn back, because some things, if you look at them again, you might never leave. Epilogue, the voice of silence. Years later, people would ask her, "Why do you love silence so much?" She would smile, not answer. Because how do you explain something like that? How do you explain a place that takes everything from you and gives you something you can never lose? Sometimes late at night, when the world was quiet, she would close her eyes and feel it again. The desert, the wind, and a voice that wasn't really a voice, but something deeper, something she carried inside her. Not loneliness, not emptiness, but a memory of someone who chose peace and someone who chose to leave. And somehow, both were right.